baby gorillas! And I think we're live. Let's just check. Let's just make sure we're on this. Let's just go to Mr. Murray's site. Oh, fantastic. Good stuff. What's happening? Are we live? Oh, we're live. Oh, hello. And let me hear your comments, guys. Always good to chat. So we're at Mr. Murray's, Craig Murray, and we're at his website again. He is, that's going to be very annoying, history, former ambassador and human rights activist. So let's see Craig Murray's trial. Craig Murray trial. Scottish politics in crisis. Oh, we'll start with this, shall we? Oh, let's have a wee look what happened to Mr. Murray. Craig Murray's contempt of court trial ends as judge adjourns to consider complex and novel trial. So we're out waiting for this. This is going to be very annoying. Former UK ambassador turns whistleblower found himself charged with contempt of court after publishing his observations of ex-Scottish First Minister Alex Salmond's prosecution or persecution. Evidence has been unveiled suggesting that Salmond was found not guilty on all charges, have been a victim of a conspiracy to undermine him politically. Oh my goodness. The contempt of court case against former UK ambassador turned whistleblower Craig Murray completed on the afternoon of 27th of January 2021 at the High Court in Edinburgh. Murray, a historian and journalist who published articles via his personal blog, was charged with 3 counts of contempt of court by the Scottish Lord Advocate James Wolfe. The charges are in relation to articles and social media posts that Mr. Murray published both before and during the March 2020 criminal trial of former First Minister Alex Salmond. Salmond was charged with 14, but reduced to 13. Again, somebody didn't bring forward their case. That would be very interesting to find out why that individual didn't bring forward their case. Of sexual harassment and assault, was ultimately found not guilty on all counts. A judicial review in the High Court of Scotland into the investigation and handling of Salmond's case found the process to be unlawful, procedurally unfair, and tainted by apparent bias or conspiracy. The whole thing was a conspiracy, allegedly. Let's make this bigger. Murray has critiqued the prosecution or persecution against Alex Salmond for being politically motivated stitch-up. He was not alone in his assessment. For example, solicitor advocate Gordon Dangerfield, a danger mouse, told Sputnik in January 2021 that emails and text messages between the Scottish civil servants, members of the SNP bureaucracy, and alleged victims in the Viet Cong group revealed what appears to be a conspiracy to destroy Salmond's reputation and political career. A parliamentary inquiry has been opened up into the Scottish Government's handling of the Salmond case. Obviously, Mr. Salmond won his civil case as well against the Scottish Government for the handling of the case, as well as the criminal case. Murray's case was heard by 3 judges, not a jury, but by 3 judges: Lord Justice General, Lord Justice Clark, and Lords Commissioner of Judiciary. Lady Leona J. Doran, who is the Lord Justice Clerk and the second most senior judge in Scotland. Oh, fantastic feminism. Oversaw the hearing and asked all questions to the respective parties. Lady Doran was also the trial judge overseeing Salmond's trial. So she's got an understanding of the larger situation. The charges, contempt of court charges, can either be brought by a judge or the Crown. There are three offences Murray is charged with: publication of material that creates a substantial risk of perjury, of prejudicing the jury in violation of the Contempt of Court Act 1981, reporting on the exclusion of two jurors in violation of a court order preventing publication of the details of the issues raised by the Advocate Depute on the 23rd of March 2020 as they related to the jurors' removal, jigsaw identification of alleged victims who testified against Salmond. John Scott QC, speaking for the respondent, i.e. Murray, stated of his oral submissions explaining that the case represented important issues raised in circumstances of some complex and some novelty. Publication of materials that creates substantial risk to prejudice the trial, the jury case in respect of Murray publishing material creating a substantial risk of prejudicing the jury rested on two articles. One article was published in August 2019 entitled "The Alex Salmond Fit Up" on Craig Murray's website, and the other in January 2020 entitled "Yes Minister Fan Fiction." Alex Prentice, QC, and Advocate Depute representing the Crown also raised the argument that Murray is responsible for improper moderation of comments underneath these two articles on his website. Oh, big crimes. Murray's team argued that too much time had been passed between the articles being published in contempt of court petition, which wasn't filed until Salmond's trial was over and he was acquitted of all charges in 2020 of March. For that reason alone, the charges should be refused, the defence argued. Murray's position is also that in any event, the articles don't violate the Contempt of Court Act. The January 2020 article in particular represents a fictional account of a conspiracy by a group of women to destroy a man's reputation and career. Written in the forum of the 1980s British political satire, Yes Minister, the court was told, reflecting Murray's desire to avoid breaching contempt of court rules. Very clever, Mr. Murray. Very clever man. Lady Doran also questioned Prentice about the amount of time that had passed between the articles being published and the charges being brought against Murray. She also noted that, to her recollection, the articles even preempted any preliminary hearing in Salmond's case, let alone his trial, which began in March. Prentice conceded that a substantial amount of time had passed between the publication and the charges. Obviously, they don't want anybody bringing any attention to the fact that this all might have been a setup by the government on an individual, a journalist who was actually on Mr. Salmond's side. The Crown could have brought formal proceedings to draw the matter to the attention of the court at the time, Prentice said, but after careful consideration decided not to do that. Instead, the prosecutor's office sent a letter suggesting that January 2020 article might violate the Contempt of Court Act. Murray submitted that if a judge had ordered him to remove the article, which never happened, then he would. Would have. Prentice, nevertheless, argued that the two articles are relevant for the context. They demonstrate the attitudes of the respondent, i.e., Murray, towards his responsibilities in maintaining anonymity of not victims, because they weren't victims in the court of law, so they're not really victims anymore. They may also be people who have brought forward false allegations, who may have in themselves have perjury and perverting the course of justice charges against the victims, of alleged victims in the Salmond case. It is unclear how persuaded the judge were on this latter argument. Murray's legal team submitted to the court that if the prosecution considered the articles a risk to the identity of protected witnesses, the anonymity order wasn't made by the court until 10 and 6 months following the publication of the two articles, respectively. Then they could have raised the matter with the court. Respondent submissions are that because the Crown has never raised any concerns to the court, they should not have been permitted to claim that these articles risked indirectly providing information that could result in the identification of protected witnesses. Murray's team also rejects the argument that they can be held liable for comments made by people other than him, either in reply on social media or on his blog. Completely correct. James Dolman, Lady Doran now moves to ask about comments on the articles published, asked if a failure to moderate them makes Murray responsible for them. Advocate Deputy says it does. So you're responsible for somebody else now, not for your own actions. You've got to be responsible for other people's actions. How can that work out? That's not can't be proper in any context whatsoever. Reporting on the and I think we have to now find out who the actual accusers were. I think there has to be an overturning of who these people were that made these allegations in the first place. Reporting on the exclusion of jurors in alleged violation of a court order, Murray could not have violated the court order made in relation to the exclusion of a jury member. Scott submitted to the court. This is because his article on the subject did not directly refer to the issue raised by the Advocate Depute, i.e., the reasons why the two jurors were removed on the 23rd of March 2020, and that was the only thing that the court order prohibited. The Crown itself acknowledges that Murray's article does not violate, however, it doesn't violate the precise wording of the order, throw it out. Nonetheless, context that he violated it by offering his explanation for the removal of the jurors. An explanation that the Crown paradoxically considers to be bizarre and unfounded, whilst simultaneously considering it violent. You can see why they get themselves all tied up here, considering it violated the bar on mentioning the issue raised by the Advocate Depute in support of the removal of jurors. Oh my goodness, what's going on here? Jurors, where are we? Jurors, jigsaw identification. The final and perhaps most complex charge Murray faces is the allegation that his articles, either individually or in conjunction with other articles and material that can be obtained, including via Google and social media, could indirectly result in members of the public determining the identity of alleged victims in the Salmond case. This is known as jigsaw identification. Whether this charge is considered proven by the court may well be determined by how the judges choose to interpret the law relating to jigsaw identification. Prentice argues that the order should be interpreted widely. This would potentially mean that a journalist would violate the law if someone who already has an intimate knowledge of the case could piece together enough information for the articles to identify a protected witnesses or identify a protected witnesses. That's not good English. Or identify a potential conspiracy if we knew who the alleged victims were in relation to Nicola Sturgeon, who has been alleged to orchestrate it. But because these people are protected, we can't see the potential ramifications of an orchestrated attempt to smear Alex Salmond for false sexual allegations. Scott argued allegedly that Scott argued that to interpret the court order so widely would be unfair under the circumstances and would be a violation of Article 10 rights of journalists and the public, thereby infringing on their right to impact and receive information. He noted that if the court decides to take that course of action, further guidance and consideration would have to be given by the judges when specifying their orders, protecting the identity of participants in court cases. In support of his position, Scott cited 2020 family law case. He quoted Mr. Justice Hayden in the case of a local authority and the mother and others who determined that PDF P8 PG, I think it is, the potential for jigsaw identification, which is meant diverse pieces of information in the public domain, which, when placed together, reveal the identity of an individual, can sometimes be too loosely asserted and risk overstated. Jigsaw come with various complexities. A 500-piece puzzle of Seuchlich Neuerstein 19th century German castle is very different position to a 12-piece puzzle of Peppa Pig. What an analogy. But you can see, obviously Nicola Sturgeon has nothing to hide. She's got nothing to hide. But she wants to obviously not actually have the connection between the alleged victims and also the people who are making allegations and being able to identify them, because obviously that may bring everybody one step closer to seeing who these people are. So obviously that's a big thing that they don't want to do. Again, covering it up, totally transparent, but we'll totally cover it up. Hi, buddy. Hi, David. Are we nippy going to get away with it? Potentially, yes. Potentially, yes. It would take. I think it's going to take some amazing feats to actually be able to start nailing this down. Potentially, may get away with it. Hayden explains that while some information in the public domain may be pieced together by those determined to do so, the risk may be relatively remote. The remoteness of the risk would require to be factored into the balancing exercise when considering the importance of Article 10 rights. Consideration should also be given that in the complex cases, it might also be possible for good faith errors to be made there, Scott told the court. Lady Doran appeared to accept. There's our old pal Tommy looking upstairs. I don't know what it is with all these socialists. They all look like they've lost a tenner and found a fiver. All the red places. There's old Georgie Porgy Galloway as well. Yeah, he's always dead serious. I'm going to give him a cuddle next time I see him. Georgie, give us a cuddle. She has the house, sadly, yes. Not only the house, but also the ability to fit up anyway. There's no checks and balances just now in the Scottish parliamentary system, and unfortunately, there's no second house as well, or upper chamber, that would hold the government to account. We've not had a public inquiry, so get right to your MSPs that we want a public inquiry. They're not wanting to bring forward the public inquiry. And yeah, we'll be very interested to find out what Alex says next week. Next week, his summation on what actually is actually been said. He should do a press conference and obviously attend the committee meeting on the same day as Nicola Sturgeon. And I would like him to tell us where we've to go for this press briefing that Alex is going to do, so that we can actually record Alex and find out what his side of the story is. But I think, having gone through the ministerial code, that Nicola Sturgeon has breached the ministerial code. There's a number of breaches. The date where she didn't have the meeting, or she said she didn't remember the meeting and had the meeting with Alex Salmond when these allegations came to light. The timely execution for legal advice was not conducted in the civil trial, and the ignoring of legal advice for the criminal trial, they said that she shouldn't bring this forward. So I can see at least 3 breaches why of the ministerial code why she would have to resign, not just one. So there's multiple breaches. Obviously, if she's conspired, and this is where she's trying to stick all her fingers in all the dikes to try and block up the information to the public to prevent her being held accountable. Because if she's conspired to destroy Alex Salmond, there'll be a lot of potential leakers, and potential information can come out of this, and only by judiciary that actually then went and prosecuted the victims would then maybe people start to crack, or if they were going to face jail time, like Murdo Fraser giving the information about Mr. Morell perjury trial, or perjury conduct in the actual Parliament to the Crown Office. We'll have to see if anything happens of that. But that might just be a small victory against this orchestration, this alleged orchestration. Dictators don't resign; they get revenge. That's right. And Nicola Sturgeon, if you think about the Count Dankula, now I don't want to say Count Dankula has become a brilliant comedian. He's become a brilliant guy, lovely fella, been smeared in the papers, like myself, been smeared in the papers, and been really sort of tried to be destroyed, and he's only gone from strength to strength. But that came from wee Nippy's administration trying to destroy Count Dankula. And Count Dankula, I don't want to say he was a nobody, he was just a regular guy like the rest of us, just a regular fella. And Nicola Sturgeon's administration wants to thought police, and under Hum's a useless hate speech bill, the racist and Islamofascist, they want to start to persecute individuals in our society. And that's unfortunately where this is going. This is unfortunately the road that Nicola Sturgeon is going down with regards to this. And if she's prepared to persecute our former leader and mentor, who else do you think she's prepared to prosecute? Do you think you're safe as an individual? There's other people. Another guy, somebody called her a Nazi, and he was prosecuted. And somebody, who else is it? Somebody said something about the old gentleman who raised millions of pounds for who just died at 100, a war hero, and he was getting prosecuted for say thought policing basically. So wee Nikki wants to thought police you and put you in jail, or she'll make up stuff and put you in jail, or oh my goodness, it's disgusting, guys. Murray's legal submission. Let me just get this jigsaw. Let me start this again. Hayden explained that while some information in the public domain may be pieced together by those determined to do so, the risk may be relatively remote. The remoteness of the risk would require to be factored into the balancing exercise when considering the importance of Article 10 rights. Consideration should also be given that in complex cases it might also be possible for good faith errors to be made there. Scott told the court. Lady Doran appeared to accept that when assessing whether jigsaw information violated a court order, and many it may be necessary to determine the facts on a case by case basis. I suppose that it may be that the assessment of this has got to be factored. I think it should be fact sensitive from the point of view of jigsaw information as opposed to other forms of identification. Lady Doran said towards the end of the hearing, jigsaw is some extent fact sensitive. She conceded. So obviously, our friend Tommy here got slaughtered in the press as well. They tried to destroy Tommy's credit to Tommy that he's still going as a political heavyweight in the Scottish political scene. But I like Tommy on a personal level. I like Tommy, although obviously me being a libertarian liberal, we don't hold the same sort of views. But on a personal level, I like Tommy. I like George Galloway as well. On a personal level, they remind me of traditional Scottish. I mean, they actually come, although they're both Catholics, they both come from almost a Scottish Calvinist. I was thinking of this last night. Doer Scottish Calvinist Red Clydeside background. So they've always completely immersed into that sort of Reverend I am happy, jolly. But I'd have to say that Tommy's got more of a wee bit more personality than George, although George is a very interesting character as well. I like George Porgy as well. But I probably prefer to go out with a drink for Tommy. I think you get more of a laugh with Tommy than you would anybody else. And he's also has, as we've seen in the papers, a wee libertarian streak going to the swingers clubs and things like that. I would have just said I'm a libertarian, that's how I live my life, what's your problem? That would have been my get out of jail for all of that. But unfortunately, I think when you're lying to protect your reputation, just like we see in this case with Nicola Sturgeon, the more you lie about things, then the more it has to get covered up. And the more covering up, it's the lying and the sneakiness about it that people don't like or have a natural revulsion to. It's not the fact that I don't think anybody cared that Tommy Sheridan was going to a swingers club, to be brutally honest, or was naked on the cover of it. I mean, we all obviously understood, even those who don't politically agree with them, understood that that was him just getting torpedoed and politically destroyed. We totally got that. So, but I mean, he's a nice fella, Tommy. I've met him before, and he's a nice, on a personal level, a nice fella. He has a total red Clydeside firebrand, and I would suggest that it's potentially that sort of politics that's held Scotland back, and that's where I'm coming to change it, to bring it back to the centre and bring in a libertarian liberal, a classical liberal political ideology back into Scotland, while protecting the workers' rights and workers' interests as well. But having entrepreneurship and the development of the Scottish economy at the forefront, while at the same time protecting workers' rights. I think that's where Tommy Sheridan and Colin Fox and George Galloway, although nice guys, and I totally understand where they come from. Obviously, with my ancestry working on the Clyde like so many others, coming from governing Clydebank, getting blown up by the Nazis in Clydebank as well, I totally understand where their politics are coming from. I just think it's regressive, especially economically regressive, and I think that's a problem. But I'll get onto the political fight for that later on. Jigsaw is is to some extent fact sensitive, she conceded. Murray's legal submissions to the court also contained that mainstream outlets such as the BBC provided far more jigsaw information. But they're not responsible. They're living in a wee world of not being having to be responsible. They're getting all the money paid by the taxpayer and the woke agenda, and they're not responsible. Defund the BBC, privatise the BBC, provided far more jigsaw information which he deliberately excluded. In effect, Murray argued a form of selective prosecution for doing less than what others had done, which is completely correct. He has been persecuted. Scott made clear that his client went to great lengths not to identify protected witnesses and strongly rebutted the prosecution's assertion that he was deliberately seeking to violate the order. Another key point raised by Scott was that it is not possible for the prosecution to rely on Google searches to support the claim that information from Murray's article could be put in search engines to determine the identity of protected witnesses. So somebody knows who these 9 people, 10 people were, and I would like to know the one in London as well that Mr. Morell was trying to identify as well. The algorithms are constantly changing, Scott told the court, and their own search results did not match those submitted by the Crown. Lady Doran herself raised the point the search results made now could not be produced the results that would have been appeared last year, a conclusion that Prentice himself accepted during the hearing. A political stitch-up. Oh, you're Tommy again. Oh, political election. My pal Tommy. A political stitch-up. Murray has previously described the charges against him as politically motivated. No, you're not kidding. Resulting from the characterisation of Salmond's case as itself being a politically motivated stitch-up. The former ambassador of Uzbekistan, the great nation of Uzbekistan, recently wrote that his defence team believed his case to be the first modern prosecution in Scotland or England from a publication allegedly influencing a juror in favour of the defendant. It has also been assumed that the Crown and the judge are big enough to counter any prejudice against the Crown. He added. Scott also briefly raised this point with the court. The Crown are alleged that Salmond's trial was unfair, potentially conspiratorial, or that any jury member was actually prejudiced by Murray's articles. The Crown are not alleging that Salmond's trial was unfair, right? So that's good. And are that any jury member was actually prejudiced by Murray's article? So what are we doing here then? This is a complete waste of time. If convicted, Murray faces 2 years in prison and an unlimited fine. The 3 judges applied the threshold of beyond all reasonable doubt when making findings of fact in his case. It was originally expected the trial would extend to a second day. However, the proceedings came to a close with Lady Doran declaring that it will take time to consider the decision and that the court would issue their verdict in writing in due course. No. So I think he's going to get found not guilty. Here we go. So this is what we're going to do anyway. Legal attempt to end the Fabian farce. Oh, the Fabian farce. Let's have a look at this then. Linda Fabiani. The legal attempt to end the Fabiani farce. That's a great title. Linda Fabiani is an SNP MSP who is, I think, in charge of the cover-up by the parliamentary inquiry into the Nicola Sturgeon affair, where, along with Andy Whiteman, who was part of the Green Party, and Scottish Greens, who now left the Greens because of the trans rights and being abused, because he didn't want he wanted women to have the choice if they had been sexually abused to pick the sex of the person that was bringing in the forensics on the back of it. And the Green Party wanted it to be on the gender, so that like a tranny guy could, man to woman, could actually inspect a woman who had been sexually assaulted. And I think he didn't want that, which I totally respect. It should have been the woman's choice to actually what she wanted to be examined by. So Andy Whiteman, working in conjunction with the four SNP members of the panel, means that there's an inbuilt majority for the Nationalists and for protecting Nicola Sturgeon on the parliamentary inquiry. Only four unionist MSPs, and so it is then not going to be objective in its summation. Although Jackie Bailey, Margaret Mitchell, Murdo Fraser, and Nat King, Cole Hamilton is are all seem to be doing their jobs relatively well, especially Murdo Fraser. Lady Doran, and in the High Court this morning, described a position taken by the Scottish Parliament legal advisers on the publication and inclusion of Jeff Aberdeen's and Alex Salmond's evidence as absurd interpretation of the court order. She also stated that the answer is for the committee to take a robust attitude to the question of publication and redaction. So, like, this is in relation to the Spectator, which I'm going to go on to later this afternoon. The Spectator winning the court case to reduce the redactions in the, I think it was an Alex Salmond trial, and to allow Alex Salmond's statement, to go out with less redactions. Lady Doran, I think, is the person who adjudicated that. So the Spectator won, which leads the way to Alex Salmond going back to the committee to give accounts of what happened in relation to the First Minister. And he will be able to, before the First Minister gives her testimony to the parliamentary inquiry, he will be able to attend now, because he was refusing to attend because the redactions, I don't know what the redactions were, but whatever the redactions were, they've been overturned by the Spectator. Fat Andy Neil has gone to the court, and Fat Andy has managed to get these redactions taken out, which then in turn allows Alex Salmond to go to the parliamentary inquiry and potentially give the press a speech about what it is that Nicola Sturgeon did to break the ministerial code, which should in turn make her resign, which she's actually refusing to say whether or not she will or will not resign. So this is what the context of this article is. But this is not the place for that. It is not my job to tell that. To recap briefly, the Fabiani inquiry, or the Alex Salmond inquiry, has also all but collapsed, as it has refused to publish or consider evidence from Jeff Aberdeen. Jeff Aberdeen, as far as I'm aware off the top of my head, was at the meeting with Alex Salmond on the March the 28th. So this has been covered up again. So his confirmation that Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon were at the meeting on March 28th, which would mean that she has lied to Parliament, said, "Oh, I don't remember, can't remember, didn't know if it was there or not. No, I don't think we talked about that, can't remember." That she has lied to Parliament and thereby breaking the ministerial code on that issue alone. As I pointed out, there's at least three areas where she has potentially broken the ministerial code, not just one. So, Jeff Aberdeen and Alex Salmond, these are the most important pieces of evidence in the entire inquiry, because obviously Jeff Aberdeen is going to corroborate Alex Salmond's statement that there was a meeting with Nicola Sturgeon on the 28th of March, I think it was, and that Alex Salmond did actually speak about the alleged orchestrated false sexual allegation accounts against him, and that this is the first meeting which Nicola Sturgeon couldn't remember. I can't remember, wasn't there. And if Jeff then corroborates Alex Salmond's statement, that means that the whole thing has actually been a setup. Because and now Linda Fabiani, an SNP MSP, is refusing to allow Jeff Aberdeen's, which I think was Alex Salmond's chief of staff, who was there at the meeting on the 28th of March, evidence to be given forward to the public. Nothing to hide. Nothing to hide. Look over there. Look over there. These are the most important pieces of evidence in the entire inquiry. Oh. Where did they go? Where'd they go? What happened there? These are the most important pieces of evidence in the entire inquiry. The committee has refused to accept them because the evidence names a person who made accusations against Alex Salmond on which he was found not guilty. Well, I would suggest that if these sort of situations happen and an accuser is not able to bring forward the the prosecution, then the anonymity should be retracted, and we should know who the person that made the accusations were, because they might have made false allegations, and we must now know who that person is so that we can actually find out if these were false allegations, because you're not a victim after you get found that you have not had the case to actually bring forward, and there might have to be a case against you. That should be the political position and the judicial position. Here is an important point. The evidence of Salmond and Aberdeen being refused by the committee has no relation at all to the accusation that the person made against Alex Salmond. She is mentioned in a different role. So this is obviously somebody close to Nicola Sturgeon, because what were they doing there at the meeting? So let me read that again. Here is the important point. The evidence of Salmond and Aberdeen being refused by the committee has no relation at all to the accusation the person made against Alex Salmond. So it must be somebody close that was there to Nicola Sturgeon who made the accusation, and was in some way was connected to this meeting as well, which is quite incredible that they're that close to Nicola Sturgeon that they've made these allegations. Wow. And they might have been there, they might have been able to be identified. Oh, this is very murky. She is mentioned in a different role, obviously connected to Nicola Sturgeon. As I repeatedly try to explain, the accusers come from a very small cohort close to Nicola Sturgeon. Oh my goodness. Oh my, we need to find out who these people are. We have to go to court and find out who these accusers are, to find out the connection to Nicola Sturgeon, to find out if this is a conspiracy to put perjury charges and perverting the course of justice charges against the potential accusers, and they may have to go to jail. If this is a cohort round Nicola Sturgeon, they've all simultaneously made these accusations, we need to the anonymity needs to be withdrawn, and we need to find out who the connection is with Nicola Sturgeon. Those closest to Sturgeon were at the heart of the orchestration of the plot. Ah, see, orchestration comes again. It's not just me that's saying it, allegedly. Ah. So think how bad this is. This is the person that you brought through orchestrating false sexual allegations on a massive scale. This is 9 or 10 people, not including the one in London, that you and your husband has overseen to destroy a man's life, potentially put him in jail, bring forward charges, and this is the type of person we have leading our country. The committee, which has been pretending to investigate, this is why we need a public inquiry, has been doing so on the basis that protection of identities of complainers precludes it from hearing any evidence that refers to these people. Well, I would suggest that they shouldn't be being protected now. If this, the illegality or the criminality is that these people might be involved in a plot, so we need to know who these people are to find out what connection they are to Nicola Sturgeon, to find out if the criminality is Nicola Sturgeon and the accusers actually fabricating this information. Polygraph tests, the full shebang. And if they have orchestrated it, they all need to go to jail. Even if it refers to these actions not connected to the accusations they made in court. Jeff Aberdeen's evidence proves conclusively that Nicola Sturgeon lied to Parliament over when she knew of the allegations about Alex Salmond. I would suggest she probably knew before that if she allegedly orchestrated it. Not just by the difference between her meeting with Aberdeen on the 29th of March and her meeting with Salmond on the 2nd of April. So let me read that again for you guys. Jeff Aberdeen's evidence proves conclusively that Nicola Sturgeon lied to Parliament over when she first knew of the allegations about Alex Salmond, not just by the difference between her meeting with Aberdeen on the 29th, so Salmond Aberdeen 29th, and her meeting with Salmond on the 2nd of April, but weeks. So he's saying that she knew about these allegations weeks before, because it was Sturgeon's office which had set up the meeting over 3 weeks earlier. So it was Nicola Sturgeon's office that set up the meeting for the 29th 3 weeks earlier to discuss this. So that's another breach of the ministerial code. Meeting over 3 weeks earlier, and the subject had been specified then. Aberdeen's evidence is not the whole story. Actually, Sturgeon initiated the whole effort to set up Alex Salmond months earlier, which I'm not surprised. That makes perfect sense. Absolutely perfect sense. But Aberdeen's evidence is the smoking gun that would force Sturgeon's resignation for lying to Parliament, yet being covered up by Linda Fabiani's SNP and Whiteman's dominance of the parliamentary inquiry. So it can't be objective. This is why we need a public inquiry. So the SNP and the Green, or not Green Independent now, majority Fabiani committee has ruled that Aberdeen's evidence must be excluded, and it is being excluded at all costs, which then covers up Nicola Sturgeon lying about this. The fig leaf is the legal advice that the court order precluding identifying individuals applies to identifying them in any circumstances. Now, this might be what I'm going to go on and talk about later on with Andy Neil, is the fact that they're actually covering up, or there's been some redaction on what is actually, so some retraction of what is redacted in the actual name, so that Alex Salmond can actually come forward and speak about this meeting and give a press conference as well, so that we can all find out and I can ask him questions. This is the interpretation that Lady Doran said in court was absurd, though it was put to her as hypothetical interpretation, not with specific reference to the Aberdeen evidence. though in context of being able to publish that evidence. Let me just read that again. This is the interpretation that Lady Doran said in court was absurd. This is what I'm going to talk about later on with Fat Andy's overturning through the Spectator, overturning this, though it was put to her as a hypothetical interpretation, not with specific reference to Aberdeen evidence, though in the context of being able to publish that evidence. The Fabiani committee is hiding behind legal advice. The source, well, we've seen how bad the SNP's legal advice has been so far. Well, in fact, it's not been bad, it's been correct. They've just ignored the legal advice. The source of this advice is mysterious. There is a solicitor to the Scottish Parliament, but my information is that this specific absurd advice actually comes at source from a US commercial law firm. Part of the globalist cabal under, what do you call him, a weekend at Bernie president. As legal advice so often is, especially advice from firms wanting their contract renewed next time, it is very friendly to what the client wants to hear, but not in the greater interest of the Scottish people. Jeff Aberdeen's evidence is therefore excluded because someone was involved in the discussion and organisation of the meeting with Nicola Sturgeon, who later added her own accusation against Alex Salmond. I mean, really, I made many more pointers you need that this is going to Nicola Sturgeon. And there has to be a way to overturn the redaction of these people to actually find out this is orchestrated. We can't have a situation where people have lied and are getting their identities protected for lying about sexual improprieties and being able to withhold evidence to the committee on Nicola Sturgeon lying to the Parliament. It's not acceptable. Something of which she made no mention at the time, as Jeff Aberdeen's testified at the Alex Salmond criminal trial. So let me just read that again. Jeff Aberdeen's evidence is therefore excluded because someone was involved in the discussion and organisation of the meetings with Nicola Sturgeon. So one of Nicola Sturgeon's closest aides organised the meetings and then made accusations against Alex Salmond, and then had to be protected, even though these accusations were thrown out against Alex Salmond, who later added her own accusation against Alex Salmond, something of which she made no mention at the time, as Jeff Aberdeen testified at Alex Salmond's criminal trial. I also found it passing strange that someone would go through literally scores of meetings about Salmond accusations before finally adding the claim that they had been sexually abused. Come on. Do they think we're stupid? Do they think the Scottish people are stupid? I always found it passing strange that someone would go through literally scores of meetings about Alex Salmond accusations before finally adding the claim that they had been sexually abused too. Polygraph test, we need to find out if this person's telling the truth, which claim the juror found against, as with all other accusations, so all other accusations thrown out. What that manoeuvre did, however, obtained was the court order protection of her identity, and also Nicola Sturgeon being protected against the revelation that she knew prior to the 2nd of April meeting. And the Scottish Government argues that it means all actions of this person in her entire role in the plot may not be discussed. I mean, that's absolutely Orwellian. Alex Salmond's statement to the Hamilton inquiry is excluded by Fabiani inquiry on precisely the same grounds, but this statement has been published with just one paragraph redacted by the Spectator. Oh, this has led to the absurd situation where Fabiani inquiry is refusing to consider Salmond's statement to the Hamilton inquiry, causing him to withdraw from Fabiani's inquiry, even though the Spectator has published the statement, which I read out on the Guerilla TV channel. The committee is absurdly arguing that it would be illegal to publish it or consider this statement, even though the Spectator has published it without being prosecuted. So let me read that again, just to make sure we all got that. This has led to the absurd situation where Fabiani inquiry is refusing to consider Salmond's statement to the Hamilton inquiry, causing him to withdraw from the Fabiani inquiry, even though the Spectator has published the statement and the Guerilla TV channel has read out the Spectator statement. The committee is absurdly arguing that it would be illegal to publish it, which it's already out there, we've already discussed it, or consider the statement even though the Spectator has published it without being prosecuted. Oh my goodness. And the Spectator has now taken the Crown to, or the government to court, and won yesterday. So we'll find out later on today how they won. This is how we end up in court today, with the Spectator, Lady Doran, to amend her court order to make clear that the publication and consideration of Aberdeen and Salmond's evidence would not be in breach. Lady Doran had been highly resistant, taking the view that it is the committee to interpret the order that is pretty plain in a sensible way, while making perfectly clear that she finds the committee's strange interpretation somewhat baffling. Yeah, because they're trying to cover it up. Just before lunch, Lady Doran has suggested an amendment to the order to state the complainers must not be identified as complainers in these proceedings. She suggested that we would clear up any misconception that they might not be named in other contexts. As I write, the court has just concluded with all parties agreeing on them. Lady Doran's amendment certainly should sweep out the legs from under the committee's ludicrous excuse for not publishing the Aberdeen and Salmond evidence, and thus pave the way for Salmond to appear before the committee. But my intelligence from the committee members is that whatever today's ruling, the SNP members will continue to refuse to publish, which is why Alex Salmond is going to do a press briefing, and they are confident that their lawyers will be able to argue the Spectator case has increased the risk of jigsawing identification. But we already know it must be somebody who is very close to Nicola Sturgeon who has made these allegations. So we already know that. So we could it could be. I don't know if any of these, but we already know that how this conspiracy is going with Judith McKinnon, Leslie Evans, Liz Lloyd, Susan Ruddock, all these women that are close to Nicola Sturgeon. It's like the lesbian intersectional Marxist harem of women who are prepared to destroy men's lives with these allegations. So the mad charade of an inquiry continues. It is, I think, the most shameless cover-up that could possibly be imagined. Wings Over Scotland have listed some 60 separate instances of the government directly obstructing the work of the inquiry. What has changed in the last fortnight is that SNP members of the inquiry are no longer feigning that they too are looking for the truth. Right, so they're right out. So it's just a big cover-up now, guys. It's just a big cover-up. Let's see what Wings Over Scotland is saying. So this is Wings Over Scotland. Justice in chains. As we write this, we still wait for Scotland's hopelessly compromised. This is the gentleman here, Lord Advocate. See, I told you I was right again. I always get it right. I told you he was compromised. As we write this, we still wait for Scotland's hopelessly compromised Lord Advocate to decide whether he, as John Sweeney has already done twice, will refuse to obey the will of the Scottish Parliament by releasing data demanded by the Fabiani inquiry. We suspect he will surprise everyone and will be released. Information will be released because, according to analysis by Craig Murray, it's actually completely useless, and the Scottish government has undeniably been red hot when it comes to the deluding the committee with vast screens of junk documents it hasn't made for and doesn't want. By coincidence, the same Craig Murray will go to trial in Edinburgh tomorrow for his liberty for the crime of allegedly telling readers of his blog the truth about the shameful failed conspiracy to Alex Salmond trial for crimes he didn't commit, a conspiracy remarkable for which nobody has yet been held accountable in any way, despite the most obvious grounds for suspicion of perjury, and which the Scottish government, is still frenziedly trying to conceal. Speaking of liars, we thought it was probably time to update the list below. On January the 17th, the First Minister told the Scottish Parliament that she and her administration and her party would cooperate fully with the look over there with the parliamentary inquiry into the Scottish government's handling of false sexual allegations made against Alex Salmond, yet they still are being protected. I have also read the account of when I first became aware of the complaint, and we have corrected inaccurate claims in the media this week relating to my chief of staff. Jackson Carlos said, "Perhaps this is the point of which I can go some way to agreeing with him that there are differing accounts of the matter. This is why it is important to allow the scrutiny of the inquiries. We should have a public inquiry that have been established now that those inquiries have been called for, and now that my government and my party have agreed to support the establishment of these inquiries and and cooperate fully with them, it is incumbent on all of us to respect these processes. That is what I will do." The question for Jackson Carlos is this: is he really interested in getting to the heart of these matters, or does he simply want to continue to make party political points with them? C further assured the Parliament ambiguously and without any qualification that the committee investigating the matter will be able to request whatever material they want, and will undertake today that we will prove whatever material they request. First Minister, the inquiries will be able to request whatever material they want, and I undertake today that we will provide whatever material they request. The definition of full, thorough, and open inquiry. It will not be for me to decide what material the parliamentary inquiry. Don't forget, SNP and Green Party are independent dominated. When it gets underway, wants to request, my committee is the government. My commitment is that the government and I will cooperate fully within it, which is, I think, appropriate. So let's see how that's been going. In the interest of completeness, we should note that the ground had been prepared in advance for the First Minister's statement, with a large number of refusals of freedom of information requests. Oh my God! Requests prior to her answer in Parliament on the same day. Oh my goodness! Scottish Government refuses to answer any 6 questions relating to the allegations against Alex Salmond, or even to confirm or deny holding information. Scottish Government refuses to provide information relating to possible complaints about the conduct of Alex Salmond. The Scottish Government refuses to provide details of any communication between the First Minister and special advisors related to the allegations against Alex Salmond. The Government refuses to give details of communication between the First Minister, Leslie Evans, and Peter Morrell relating to the allegations against Alex Salmond. The Scottish Government refuses to confirm or deny holding information regarding communications between government officials and civil servants relating to the allegations against Alex Salmond. The Scottish Government refuses to provide details of communication between ministers and staff relating to the allegations against Alex Salmond. The Scottish Government refuses to confirm or deny. Nothing to hide, nothing to hide, nothing, not a thing. Scottish Government refuses to confirm or deny holding any information regarding communications between the First Minister Alex Salmond on any subject in 2018. Scottish Government refuses to confirm or deny holding any information regarding communications between the First Minister Leslie Evans and Alex Salmond on any subject in 2018. The Scottish Government refuses to answer 8 questions relating to the communications between First Minister and Alex Salmond in relation to allegations against him. This is from the wingsoverscotland.com /justice in chains /hashtag more dash 123703. A sturgeon is a prehistoric fish that has its eggs removed for the elite to have on toast. They are a big they are too big for nets. They need breaching. That's very good. Very, very good. And how appropriate. The Government refuses to answer 8 questions related to the communications between the First Minister and Alex Salmond in relation to allegations against him. Scottish Government refuses to confirm or deny holding any information regarding communications between the First Minister, Peter Morrell, Alex Salmond, and any other government ministers or staff relating to allegations against Alex Salmond. Scottish Government refuses to confirm or deny holding any information regarding communication between the First Minister and Alex Salmond regarding allegations against him in 2018. Scottish Government refuses to confirm or deny holding any information related to the outcome of any decision between the First Minister and Alex Salmond regarding allegations against him on the 2018. Scottish Government denies Nicola Sturgeon knew anything about these allegations before April 2018. This is quite a long one. I think I may actually do this. I'll leave it there and I'll do a separate interview. So we've down to the full list of all the acts of obstruction of the Scottish Government have undertaken since the First Minister pledged on cooperating fully on the 17th of January 2019. And I'll go through this. I'll bookmark this. Let's bookmark it. And we'll go through these all individually, shall we? How exciting. Let's see if we can click on these. Oh, look at that. We can actually go into the details. Oh, we'll go into all the details on them. Fantastic. Right, my baby girls. So I'll go and do the Spectator, and I might do this tomorrow. How exciting. Let's put up a wee thing for this as well. Wings over Scotland. And we'll go through all of this, and we'll see where the actual real truth is. Love my baby gorillas. Love you guys.